Hello, and welcome to Failing Up, a limited series from the shallow end about our collecting failures, how they haunt us, and ultimately make us better collectors. It's about the moments we need, even if we don't necessarily want them. I'm Dave Schwartz, and I wanted to do this series to help us all feel a little less alone in this hobby. We've all made mistakes. No one is perfect. And maybe, just maybe, we can learn from each other. Today's guest is Andrew, who is Fair Star Cards on Instagram. Andrew collects hockey and other sports, and is a collector who seeks personal connections within the cards he collects. As an educator, he knows that learning can sometimes be painful, but it's what you do with that pain and how you react that makes the difference. Welcome back to the podcast. Really excited to have him back on for one of these Failing Up episodes. He is Andrew at Fair Star Cards on Instagram. Andrew, tell us about a failure from your collecting past.
You only want to hear about one because I've got lots, but I will focus on this one. So this beautiful card came up for sale on Facebook Marketplace about maybe 2 years ago. And it's a Guy Lafleur rookie card, or at least that's what I thought it was anyway. So I got back into the hobby just like so many others around 2020. And so this would have been probably 2022, 2023 early. It was winter time. And so I thought I was qualified to be able to buy nice cards like this privately, face to face. And so I saw this ad. And so I went and met the guy, and it was a great deal. It's not a mint Lafleur by any stretch of the imagination, but it looks okay. It looks low grade, and so I happily bought it. It was wintertime, and I come from Canada, southwestern Ontario, where we've got quite extremes in temperatures, and in the wintertime it can be quite cold. And so this guy sat in his nice warm truck, and I stood out in the parking lot with freezing hands, looking through a whole bunch of cards that he wanted to sell me. And so because the price was so nice on this one, I'm like, absolutely, I'll grab that one. And it wasn't until I got home. Actually, I didn't even notice it when I was at home, which I should have, because I have other Lafleur rookie cards. I actually posted it on a Facebook group that I was part of to sell it. And it's a great Facebook group. I'm really, really happy. I've made some really good friends in that one. But someone very gently said, "I think that's a fake." And then immediately, of course, the moderators pulled it down and sent me a message, "You're not allowed to sell fakes." I'm like, "I know, sorry, I totally didn't realize it." And as soon as I was called out as fake, I went and did what I should have done, or I should have been prepared to do, which was get an authentic one. So here's one that's graded by BGS. This one's one that I think I showed on the last podcast. This one's autographed by Lafleur. And if you hold them up together, you can see like the color is just slightly off. Like size-wise, font-wise, all that kind of stuff, it looks pretty good. But the color is just, let me get this. For those of you who are on audio right now, I'm showing the front and back of the cards. And the differences are subtle, but they are there. And that opened me up to a whole world of course there are fakes out there. I knew that. I knew that even when I was a kid and in the hobby. But you kind of in the excitement I'd been dealing with honest people and dealing on eBay where you have some protection anyway. And I guess I got complacent and a little bit too easygoing. And I totally fell for it. And so then, of course, I reached out to the seller and said, "You sold me a fake." And he kind of pushed back and said, "How do you know it's a fake? Like, it doesn't look like a fake to me. It looks pretty good." And so I sent him photos of the two cards that I just showed you. And then he didn't really respond to me at all. So that was a learning experience. But I have actually kept this card around as a reminder of what can happen if you're not careful.
There are some mistakes that we make in this hobby that are fully our own. And there are some that are brought on by others. And so there's one attitude in which people will say, well, hey, do your research and this won't happen. And that's absolutely true. We need to
Mhm.
own our own mistakes. But at the same time, some mistakes don't happen if they're not driven by a bad actor. And I'm not saying the guy who sold that to you is a bad actor. I'm also not saying he's not a bad actor, right? But I early on in my hobby return, I had the same thing happen with an 85 Topps Mark McGwire, the USA card that also turned out to be a fake. What does it feel like when something like this happens, and you realize that you may have, at least temporarily, trusted someone who maybe should not have been trusted?
Well, the truth of the matter is, my first reaction was embarrassment. Like, I'm old enough now to have probably a healthy dose of, maybe, I don't like to say cynicism, but um, I know that there are bad actors out there, and anytime there is money, there are bad actors that attracts crooks. And so, yeah, I'll never buy anything from this guy again. He posts stuff with some frequency on Facebook Marketplace, and I check them out, and I always wonder, should I do anything? Do I owe anybody? Like, should I expose him? But again, I don't know if he's the one that made it. I don't think he was. He might have been duped as well. Don't know. But I just, like, I know I've distanced myself from him. I won't buy from him again. But yeah, my initial reaction was embarrassment. Like, oh my gosh, I totally got duped. I should have known better. I should have done my research. I shouldn't have let the cold pressure me into poor decisions. Because, like, there was another card that I bought from him too that I thought was an O-Pee-Chee that turned out to be a Topps. Again, that's on me. He had it labeled as OPC, which is short for O-Pee-Chee, but still, that's on me. I was doing a deal in a cold parking lot, and I should have known better. I should have asked to come into his truck or something. But yeah, that was my reactions. Like, oh my gosh, I totally got duped.
So how did you then use this experience as you started getting? You mentioned this happened when you first started getting back into the hobby, and then
Sadly, it was like 2 years afterwards.
2 years after.
So sadly, it was about 2 years afterwards. So I wasn't brand new. I
that.
should have known better.
Yeah. Okay. Now you do. And then how did you use the experience maybe in, future experiences, future dealings, future acquisitions?
So I now go into any kind of a deal with a healthy dose of cynicism, unless I know and trust the person. But I also went about trying to equip myself, because again, back in the 80s and 90s when I was collecting as a kid, I knew that there were fakes, and I knew that there were bad actors out there. And in fact, when I got back into the hobby and started selling through my collection, and back in those days, you bought full sets, and before I sold my sets, I wanted to make sure they were actually complete, so I hadn't opened them probably ever. And I found at least a couple that were missing some cards. And so even back then, was that intentional? Probably, but I don't know. So I've now tried to go about equipping myself on dealing with bad actors and being able to identify, in this case, fakes. So one of the first things I did is I bought this book, which is ironically enough by an author called Ryan Nolan, not Nolan Ryan. And it's got a list. So it's all, oh yeah, by the way, for the audio listeners, this is Spotting Fakes by not Nolan Ryan, by Ryan Nolan. And it's a book that is full of some of the key iconic cards that have been faked from baseball. They've got the old mill Joe Jackson to, basketball, football, hockey, soccer, even boxing with some Mike Tyson cards in there. So just trying to educate myself that way. And then I don't remember who it was or where I heard this, but I latched onto this idea too. I've since gone out and I carry these around to any kind of a deal. So I'm showing a bunch of cards here. These are all common cards. They're nobodies. Well, not nobodies. I shouldn't say that. They're somebody. But they're not of high value. But they're cards from key sets of players that I want to get. So this card that I'm holding up here is a 1951 Parkhurst. And that's the set where Gordie Howe's rookie card's from. So it's not a high value card. It's in poor condition, but this way I can, if I ever get the opportunity to buy a Gordie Howe rookie raw, then I can pull this out and I can smell it. I can feel it. I can compare the thickness of it to the Gordie. And I've done that with several cards. This one's one from 1966 Topps. It's the Bobby Orr. These are all hockey, but the Bobby Orr rookie year. I've got this one from 85. That's the Mario Lemieux rookie. Now, I probably don't need that one. Mario is my one of my PCs, so I have seen a lot of his rookie cards, so I feel like I'm fairly competent identifying them. But like, so I've got some from here's the Gretzky year. I've actually since realized I should probably get a common from the Edmonton Oilers, because then it's at least the same colors. But yeah, like I've done what I feel like I can reasonably well to protect myself or to equip myself, that if I'm ever in that situation again, I can actually make a much better decision. So I can compare the sizes, like I'll hold up. So in this case, this is Gretzky's second year, 1980 O-Pee-Chee. I can hold up the card and make sure that it's cut to the same size. I can like check out the coloring on it, right? The color on the back, the color in the front, how the color plates line up, for registration. I can do what I can, at least. Is it a guarantee? Not at all. But I feel like it's protected me better.
I want to not move away from this idea so quick, because this is really interesting. So just to recap, there are certain cards that that you want of players who you want to collect. And before you go out and collect those players, you find other cards from those sets to bring with you so that you can compare them when you see them in person or wherever you happen to see them, to make sure that there is some alliance between these two. And you realize that, okay, nothing, at least that I can tell, seems fishy. Is that right?
Correct. Yeah.
Great. So what would you then say? Because we've all been there. Like you've shared your story with us, and I briefly mentioned that, of course, this happened to me as well. How would you maybe encourage someone? Let's say if you're at the Toronto show, and you run into someone and this just happened to them, where they just were excited for a card and you realize they bought a fake, and you've got to break the news to them. What would you say to them to maybe keep them from leaving the hobby, right? Because maybe they feel silly, but at the same time to keep on learning. How would you encourage them to power through?
That's a tough one. That's hard to do. But I would first of all say I've been there. That is exactly the same thing that I did, and I maybe even tell them my story, and then tell them hopefully what I've learned from it. Because the value of failure, the value of screwing up, is that it's not the end game. You live another day, probably. I guess I shouldn't say that flippantly, but I mean, but most of us are going to live another day after the screw up, and you learn from it, right? It's a failure if that's the end, and if you give up, and if you pulled yourself out of the hobby or whatever else other thing that we're talking about. But in this case, the hobby, if you leave the hobby, because the hobby is pretty amazing. I say this to lots of people. You can, for kids, you learn basic economics. You learn how to talk to adults face to face. You learn how to negotiate. For adults, there's the nostalgia factor, getting back into something that so many of us did as kids. And then it's harder as adults to meet friends with common interests, right? Like our friends tend to be our kids' parents, right? And you may or may not have lots in common with them, but this way, like being in a hobby like this allows you to really have a pretty interesting social circle of people who have common interests. So to leave the hobby because you screwed up, because you had let's call it what it is, a failure. I think it's a double failure than if you pull yourself out of something that hurts. And instead, try and learn from that and try and protect others from it as well. And so that's what I would try and do, and try and convince them, depending on obviously how badly the fake or the error was, how much it cost. Then hopefully I can convince them to learn from it and to stick with it and learn, improve.
Yeah. Improve. I love it. 100%. As we come to the end of our time together, I do want to ask you. So you've put the work in. You mentioned the book that you read through, and just the other types of education that you've formed on yourself. Since that incident a while back, have there been any moments or any examples where you were looking at a card and then backed off because you thought, Like your little, like your spidey sense went off, and you thought this doesn't seem right.
I haven't actually had a lot of opportunities in that regard, because any deals that I've done since then, I think have been with pretty reputable or people that I know. I guess that's not true, but I bought some graded cards, and again, I put some I put some faith, I guess, into PSA, and I know I probably should be really really diligent about looking up the PSA numbers to make sure that they're authentic. But I will say that I learned another lesson earlier this summer, because again, the weather. So don't feel pressured to buy simply because you're uncomfortable. So what was it, in June? We were in the middle of a heat wave, and I made a deal with the guy it was pouring rain. So we're in a car, and for some reason the car was off, and it was oppressively hot in the car, and we couldn't open the windows or the doors because it was just torrential downpour. And so I made a rush deal. Now, it wasn't a bad one, but I mean, I probably overpaid by about $50 because I verified that it was authentic, because I used one of my cards to verify that it was authentic, but I didn't inspect it closely enough, and I didn't realize that there had been a crease right across the guy's face, where I don't mind creases on vintage cards, but across his face, I probably wouldn't have done the deal, at least not for that cost. So I'm still learning. I'm still screwing up. Now, this one I bought a fake, but this one I bought despite in the duress of discomfort.
Well, and I think that just goes to show that this is a lifelong learning process. We never stop screwing up. I do it, you do it, we all do it. And the key is just to keep going and just to keep learning.
That's right.
So, Andrew, thank you. At Fair Star Cards on Instagram. Take care. Talk to you soon.
Thanks, Dave.